Hello, and welcome back to Forgotten Ties. We have a story for you today that is so unsettling, so tragic, and yet so full of the kind of cruel irony that only fate could concoct. It's a story that asks the simple question: what do you do when the very thing you've mourned for years, the very symbol of your greatest loss, reappears out of nowhere in the hands of a stranger? 23 years ago, the name Elara Vance was synonymous with joy. A young, vibrant woman, she was on the cusp of an incredible new chapter. She and her husband, Leo, had just welcomed their first child, a beautiful baby boy with his father's bright blue eyes and his mother's mischievous smile. They named him Jasper. To Elara, he was everything. A tiny miracle she had waited her whole life for. She had spent months knitting a special blanket for him, a simple, cream-colored wool with a delicate diamond pattern she'd learned from her grandmother. It was more than just a blanket, it was a tangible piece of her love, a small, soft world wrapped around her son. The Vance family lived in a quaint, two-story house in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Cincinnati. Life was perfect, almost ridiculously so. Until it wasn't. One Tuesday morning, a day that started like any other, their world was shattered. Leo had to go into the city for an important meeting, leaving Elara to take Jasper to his first checkup. She bundled him up, placing him securely in his car seat, the cream-colored blanket tucked carefully around him. Elara remembers every detail with a chilling clarity that still haunts her dreams. The crisp air, the faint scent of rain, the way Jasper's tiny hand gripped her finger before she closed the car door. It was a mundane moment, a fleeting image, but it was the last time she would ever see him. The news reports were a blur. A car accident. A high-speed collision on a slick highway. A witness claimed a distracted driver swerved, hitting Elara's car head-on. The police found the wreck, a twisted metal coffin, but no sign of Jasper. The car seat was empty. The blanket gone. The only thing left was the chilling, hollow silence where a life should have been. The authorities launched a massive search, but no trace of the baby was ever found. He was simply gone. For months, for years, Elara and Leo held on to the faintest thread of hope, but eventually, the hope turned to dust. The police closed the case, listing Jasper as deceased, his body presumed lost in the chaos of the crash and the ensuing fire that engulfed the vehicle. Elara's grief wasn't just a wound, it was a gaping chasm. It consumed her, a silent scream that never left her throat. The memory of that missing blanket, the one she had so lovingly crafted, became a phantom limb, a constant, dull ache she carried with her every day. Time, as they say, marches on, but for Elara, it was a slow, agonizing crawl. She and Leo tried to move forward. They had another child, a daughter named Sophie, who brought a new light into their lives. But a part of Elara remained locked in that Tuesday morning, forever searching for a ghost. She never spoke about Jasper. The pain was too raw, too deeply embedded. She held it close, a secret sorrow that isolated her even from her own family. She became a brilliant, successful architect, her precise, meticulous work a stark contrast to the beautiful chaos of her inner world. She built beautiful, sturdy homes for others, while her own heart remained a ruin. Fast forward 2 decades. Elara, now in her late 50s, was attending a charity gala in downtown Seattle. She was there with a client, a wealthy tech mogul who insisted she accompany him. The event was loud and vibrant, filled with the kind of superficial chatter she usually avoided. She was just about to slip away when her client, an older man named Mr. Harrington, introduced her to a young woman. "Elara, this is Amelia Thorne," he said with a warm smile. "She's a brilliant young painter. You two should talk." Amelia was a vision of artistic rebellion. She had a shock of bright, crimson hair, a nose ring, and a patchwork denim jacket over a formal gown. She was a whirlwind of energy and optimism, the complete opposite of Elara's quiet, reserved demeanor. They exchanged pleasantries, talking about art and architecture, finding a surprising common ground. Elara found herself genuinely drawn to Amelia's vibrant spirit. But then, as they were talking, Amelia reached into her bag to grab a small notepad. She pulled out a small, lumpy bundle. A baby blanket. It was a simple, cream-colored wool with a delicate diamond pattern. Elara's breath hitched. Her heart, a weary, scarred organ, started to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. It was a replica. No, it was identical. Every stitch, every loop, every subtle imperfection was exactly the same as the one she had lost all those years ago. The world around her, the music, the chatter, the glittering lights, faded into a distant hum. All she could see was that blanket. All she could hear was the deafening silence of a memory she had spent her life trying to bury. Her hand, trembling slightly, reached out. Where did you get that?" The words came out as a fragile whisper, barely audible over the din of the crowd. Amelia looked at her, a little confused by the intensity of her question. "Oh, this," she said, holding up the blanket with a fond smile. "It's been in my family forever. My mom said it was my special blanket when I was a baby." A special blanket when she was a baby. Elara's mind raced. Amelia was in her early 20s. If this was her baby blanket, she would have been born right around the time Jasper disappeared. The coincidences were too powerful, too terrifying to be dismissed. This was no mere coincidence. This was a direct, visceral connection to her past. It was a ghost, a solid, tangible ghost of the little boy she had lost. The air grew thin. Elara felt a wave of nausea wash over her. It couldn't be. It was impossible. And yet, the blanket was right there, a silent, damning witness. This wasn't just a random encounter. It was the beginning of a terrifying, decades-long mystery that had just found its way back to her. The blanket was identical to the one she lost years ago, and with that, the forgotten ties of a shattered life began to unravel. Elara's world narrowed to the sight of that small, woolen blanket. The vibrant gala, with its laughing guests and tinkling champagne glasses, felt like a distant planet. Her focus was entirely on Amelia, on the young woman who, in her hands, held the key to Elara's greatest tragedy. She managed to compose herself, forcing a smile that felt like a painful mask. "It's beautiful," Elara said, her voice surprisingly steady. I used to knit. That pattern is very unique. You say your mother gave it to you?" Amelia nodded, her bright eyes innocent and unaware of the turmoil she had just unleashed. "Yeah, she did. She said it was a gift from a friend of hers back when she was in Cincinnati. We moved away not long after I was born." Cincinnati. The word echoed in Elara's mind like a gunshot. The city where it all happened. The city where her son vanished without a trace. The threads were beginning to tangle, not just in her mind, but in a way that felt horrifyingly real. Elara had to know more. She had to understand how this seemingly innocuous object had traveled across a continent and landed in her lap. She asked Amelia for her mother's name. "Her name is Evelyn," Amelia said. "Evelyn Thorne. She lives in a small town in Oregon now." Evelyn Thorne. Elara had never heard the name before. But that didn't mean anything. This was a long time ago. People move, people change. Elara took a deep breath. She knew she couldn't press the matter here, not with so many people around. It would seem strange, obsessive. She needed to be subtle, careful. She exchanged contact information with Amelia, pretending she was interested in commissioning a painting from her. The young woman was delighted. "I'll call you next week, then," Amelia said, and with a final, oblivious smile, she was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Elara was left standing alone, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. The grief she had suppressed for 2 decades was back, not as a whisper, but as a roar. It was mixed with a searing, white-hot anger and a new, terrifying hope. She went to the restroom, her hands shaking so badly she could barely turn on the faucet. She splashed cold water on her face, staring at her reflection. She saw a woman she barely recognized, a face etched with the lines of a life lived with an empty space inside. But now, in her eyes, there was a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: purpose. The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. Elara canceled all her appointments, making up an excuse about a family emergency. She hired a private investigator, a former police detective named Martin, whom she had used once before for a sensitive corporate matter. She met him in a quiet coffee shop, the air thick with the smell of roasted beans and unspoken secrets. "I need you to find someone for me," Elara said, her voice low and serious. "A woman named Evelyn Thorne. I need to know everything about her. Where she lived in Cincinnati 23 years ago, who she knew, everything." Martin, a stoic man with a tired face and sharp eyes, listened without a word, taking notes on a small pad. "And the reason?" he asked, his pen hovering over the paper. Elara hesitated. She couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. He would think she was crazy. "She was a former colleague," she lied smoothly. "We had a dispute over a project years ago. It's come up again, and I need to settle it." It was a flimsy excuse, but it was enough. Martin simply nodded and said he'd get back to her. While Martin worked, Elara did her own research, a meticulous, obsessive deep dive into old news reports. She found the articles about the car crash, the grainy black and white photos of the mangled wreck. The details were just as she remembered them. The empty car seat, the missing baby. But this time, she looked for something more. Anything. The names of witnesses, police officers, anything that could connect her to Evelyn Thorne. There was nothing. It was a dead end. A week later, Martin called. His voice was flat, professional. "I have something for you. Evelyn Thorne. A lot of her life is pretty unremarkable. Grew up in Ohio, worked as a nanny for a few families in Cincinnati in the early 2000s, before she moved to Oregon." A nanny. Elara's heart seized. "Do you know which families?" she asked, her voice a little too eager. "A few," Martin said. "But one in particular stands out. She worked for a wealthy couple, the Harrisons, who lived not far from you, as it happens. They had a young child, a boy about the same age as your daughter." He paused, looking at his notes. "And she did a stint as a live-in nanny for a woman named Sandra Peterson. Peterson was a single mother. Had a baby boy named Elias. But that was a few years before the accident." The names meant nothing to her. But the details were like puzzle pieces scattered across a dusty floor. Evelyn Thorne was a nanny in her neighborhood at the same time her son went missing. Elara's mind connected the dots with a terrifying speed. Was it possible? Was it just a coincidence? The baby blanket screamed that it was not. "Did you find anything else?" Elara asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Anything at all?" "There's something a little strange," Martin said. "Evelyn Thorne's social security records show she had a baby boy born 2 months after your son went missing. She listed the father as unknown. And she never reported it to any of her employers. She just showed up with a baby. She also changed her address multiple times in the first few years, almost as if she was trying to stay off the grid." The words hit Elara like a physical blow. A baby boy. 2 months after her son disappeared. This was no coincidence. This was a direct, irrefutable link. The pieces of the puzzle weren't just scattered anymore. They were beginning to form a horrifying picture. A picture of a grieving nanny, a missing baby, and a lie that had been buried for over 20 years. A lie wrapped in the threads of a simple baby blanket. But the most gut-wrenching detail was yet to come. Martin continued. "And the father. I did a little digging into the unknown. I found out he was a man named Leo. Leo Thorne. Evelyn's brother. But he went missing right around the time the baby was born. No record of him since." A chill ran down Elara's spine. Leo. The same name as her husband. Could it be? Was it some kind of sick joke? A coincidence too cruel to be real? The web of deceit was becoming thicker, more tangled. The blanket was the starting point, but now, the trail was leading her down a dark path she never could have imagined. Her son, her missing son, might not be dead after all. He might be alive, raised by a woman who had stolen him and a brother who disappeared in the process. The thread of deceit was now unraveling, and it was leading her to a truth that would either set her free or destroy her completely. The discovery of Evelyn Thorne's past and the chilling coincidence of the name Leo sent Elara into a spiral of disbelief and frantic action. The grief she had carried for over 2 decades was now being replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She had to know. She had to see. She had to come face to face with the woman who might have stolen her son. Elara contacted Martin again, her voice now a mix of desperation and grim determination. I need you to find Evelyn Thorne's current address in Oregon. And I want to know everything about her life now. Does she have a family? Any other children? Martin, sensing the shift in her tone, pushed back. Elara, what's going on? This isn't just a business dispute, is it? Elara knew she couldn't hide it anymore. She took a deep breath and told him everything: the car crash, the missing baby, the blanket, and the shocking discovery of Amelia. She spoke in a rush, the words tumbling out, revealing the raw, unhealed wound of her past. Martin listened, his face a mask of shock and sympathy. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. I don't know what to tell you, Elara, he said finally. This is a long shot. A wild goose chase. You're holding onto a flimsy thread, a 20-year-old memory and a blanket. People lose things. People have coincidences. The chances are. I don't care about the chances, Elara interrupted, her voice steel. The blanket is identical. The timing is identical. The city is identical. And the name is a gut punch. You tell me that's a coincidence. I will not rest until I know the truth. Please, Martin. Just get me the information. Martin, seeing the fire in her eyes, knew there was no convincing her otherwise. He agreed. Within a few days, he had an address for Evelyn Thorne in a small, quiet town in Oregon, along with a file of information about her life. She was a single mother, still living with her daughter, Amelia. They lived a simple life. Evelyn worked as a librarian. A quiet, unassuming existence that seemed to hide a dark and terrible secret. Elara didn't tell her husband, Leo, or her daughter, Sophie. She knew they would try to stop her. They would tell her she was being irrational, that she was destroying the peace they had so painstakingly built. This was something she had to do alone. She booked a flight to Oregon, telling her family she was going on a business trip. The drive from the airport to Evelyn's town was long and filled with a sense of surreal dread. Elara drove slowly through the quaint streets, her eyes scanning the houses. She found Evelyn's address, a small, 2-story house with a tidy lawn and a porch swing. It was the kind of place that radiated normalcy. The kind of place where a lie could be buried deep beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect life. Elara parked her rental car down the street and sat there, her heart pounding. What would she say? What would she do? She had no plan, only a burning need for answers. She saw a woman come out onto the porch to water a small flower pot. It was Evelyn. She had short, graying hair and a kind, gentle face. She looked nothing like the monster Elara had imagined. She looked like a tired mother, a woman who had lived a simple life. The contrast was jarring, and it made the whole situation even more surreal and horrifying. Elara got out of the car, her legs feeling wobbly. She walked slowly up the path, her feet crunching on the gravel. Evelyn looked up, a slight frown on her face. Can I help you? Evelyn asked, her voice soft and a little weary. Evelyn. Elara asked, her voice shaking slightly. My name is Elara Vance. I'm a friend of your daughter's. A look of mild recognition flickered across Evelyn's face. Oh, Elara. Amelia mentioned you. The architect. She was so excited you liked her work. It's a small world, isn't it? What a surprise. Elara's carefully constructed plan dissolved. She couldn't pretend anymore. Evelyn, she said, her voice dropping to a low, raw tone. I didn't come here to talk about art. I came here to talk about something else. Something you have. Something you took from me. Evelyn's face, which had been open and friendly, immediately closed off. A subtle, but undeniable, mask of fear and defensiveness slid into place. Her eyes, which had been kind, now looked wary. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice now flat and cold. I think you have me confused with someone else. I don't, Elara said, taking a step closer. I'm talking about a baby blanket. A simple, cream-colored wool with a diamond pattern. A blanket I knitted for my son, Jasper, 23 years ago. A blanket you gave to your daughter, Amelia, and claimed as her own. Evelyn's face went white. All the color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking like a ghost. She gripped the railing of the porch, her knuckles turning white. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know any Jasper. I've never been to Cincinnati. Please leave. The denial, so quick and so absolute, was all the confirmation Elara needed. Don't lie to me, Evelyn, Elara said, the years of grief and frustration and silent agony boiling over. I know you were a nanny in Cincinnati. I know you had a son 2 months after mine disappeared. And I know about the blanket. You can't deny it. It's a part of me. A part of my soul. You stole my son. Evelyn's composure crumbled. Her shoulders slumped. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but it was not a tear of remorse. It was a tear of defeat. He wasn't your son, she whispered, her voice a low, guttural growl of a confession. He was mine. You never loved him. You were too rich, too busy with your perfect life. You didn't deserve him. The words hit Elara like a physical blow, a vicious, cruel twist of a knife. What are you talking about? She cried out, her voice breaking. I was his mother. I loved him more than anything in the world. You have no idea what I've been through. I saw him, Evelyn said, her voice barely audible. That day, I was driving behind you on the highway. I saw the crash. I saw your car and I saw the baby seat get thrown from the car. The blanket was still wrapped around him. He was a perfect angel. And you were so busy on your phone, you didn't even notice. He was screaming, but you couldn't hear him. You were too consumed with your perfect life. Elara froze. Her phone. That day, she had received a call from Leo about a change in their dinner plans. She had fumbled with it, glancing down for a second, a fleeting moment of distraction that had haunted her for over 2 decades. But she wasn't on the phone when the crash happened. The driver had swerved. But the way Evelyn said it, as if Elara had been the one to blame. That's a lie, Elara said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and a terrible, dawning horror. That's a horrible lie. Is it? Evelyn asked, a faint, cruel smile playing on her lips. He was fine. He wasn't even scratched. I got to him first. The blanket. I saw the blanket and I knew it was meant to be. I took him. And I raised him. I gave him a life. He's my son. He's my Elias. Elara stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. Elias. The name Martin had mentioned. The name of Evelyn's son. A chill, more profound than any she had ever felt, ran through her body. The baby blanket was identical to the one she lost, but now the truth was unraveling into a far more sinister and soul-crushing reality than she could have ever imagined. The lies were coming undone, but the truth was more terrifying than the years of silence. The confession hung in the air, a thick, poisonous cloud of deceit and grief. Evelyn Thorne, the quiet librarian, had just admitted to a crime so monstrous, so unimaginable, that Elara could barely process it. Her son wasn't dead. He had been stolen. Stolen by a woman who watched the car crash, saw an opportunity, and took it. The grief Elara had carried for years now turned into a burning, righteous fury. The quiet, reserved architect was gone, replaced by a mother on a warpath. Where is he? Elara demanded, her voice hard and full of a power she didn't know she possessed. Where is my son? Evelyn's face contorted with a mixture of fear and defiance. He's not your son, she hissed. He's my son. He's Elias. And you can't have him. You can't just walk back into his life and rip him away from everything he's ever known. The mention of the name Elias was a final, painful confirmation. The baby born 2 months after the crash, the one with an unknown father, was none other than her own son. The coincidences, the lies, the pain, it all made sense. The entire, twisted narrative of her life was laid bare, and it was a masterpiece of deception. Elara took a step forward, her hands clenched into fists. You had no right, Elara said, her voice low and filled with a cold, terrifying calm. You had no right to take my child, to raise him on a lie. You destroyed my family. You destroyed my life. I saved his life. Evelyn screamed, tears streaming down her face. You were distracted. You were on the phone. You were going to get him killed. I was there. I saw it. I saw your car swerve, and I saw that you didn't even notice him when he was crying. Elara froze. The lie about the phone. It was a flimsy excuse to rationalize a monstrous crime. Elara knew, deep down, that she had not been on the phone at the moment of impact. But the guilt had been there, a silent shadow, a what-if that had gnawed at her for years. And Evelyn, seeing that flicker of doubt, had used it as her justification. The confrontation was interrupted by the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Amelia. Elara had to think fast. She had no proof, just a confession that would be her word against Evelyn's. She had to leave, but she couldn't leave empty-handed. She looked at Evelyn, a silent, powerful promise in her eyes. This isn't over, she said. I will be back. And I will get my son back. You can't hide from the truth forever. Elara walked back to her car, her mind a whirlwind of pain and clarity. She immediately called Martin. I found her, she said, her voice shaking with a mix of fury and relief. She confessed. She said she took him. He's alive. I need you to find a way to get DNA evidence. I need you to build a case against her. Martin listened, his professional demeanor giving way to a shared sense of urgency. Elara, this is a dangerous game, he warned. She's a master manipulator. She will lie. She will do anything to protect the life she's built. I don't care, Elara said. I have my son. He's out there. And I'm going to get him back. Whatever it takes. The following weeks were a blur of legal and investigative work. Martin, now fully committed, found a clever way to obtain a DNA sample from Amelia under the pretense of a corporate wellness program. The results came back a few days later, and they were conclusive. Amelia Thorne was not Evelyn's biological daughter, and she was a perfect match for Elara and Leo Vance's DNA. This confirmed it. Amelia was not Evelyn's biological daughter. She was her son. He had been living as a woman, as Amelia, for over 2 decades. The revelation was a staggering blow, a cruel twist that added another layer of unimaginable pain and confusion to the story. Elara and Leo sat in a sterile law office, the DNA results a flimsy piece of paper in their hands, but a life-changing truth written on it. Elara broke the news to Leo, and he reacted with a mixture of shock, grief, and a fierce, protective love. The pain of losing their son was now replaced by the overwhelming, disorienting truth of finding their daughter. A daughter they had named Jasper. A child they had mourned for 23 years, who was now a vibrant, artistic young woman named Amelia. They contacted a lawyer and began the process of a legal battle against Evelyn Thorne. The case was complex, a web of kidnapping, fraud, and identity theft. But with the DNA evidence and Evelyn's past as a nanny, the case was strong. The news broke, and it was a media sensation. The story of a missing baby, a stolen identity, and a decades-long secret that had been unraveled by a simple baby blanket captivated the nation. But the most difficult part was yet to come. They had to tell Amelia. They had to walk up to the young woman they had just met, the woman they had admired, and tell her that her entire life was a lie. Elara and Leo met her at a neutral location, a quiet park near her apartment. Amelia, who had heard the news reports, was already looking pale and confused. Amelia, Elara began, her voice trembling. There's something we need to tell you. Something about your mother, about Evelyn. She told her the entire story, from the car crash to the blanket, to the DNA results. She spoke with a quiet, heartbreaking sincerity, holding nothing back. She showed her the old photographs of a baby boy, of Jasper, a tiny face that looked so much like her own. Amelia listened, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. The vibrant, rebellious young woman slowly faded, replaced by a terrified child lost in a world of lies. No, Amelia said, tears welling up in her eyes. That's not possible. My mom, she loves me. She's my mother. She did love you, Elara said gently. But she wasn't your mother. We are. I am your mother. And your father, Leo, is right here. The truth was a heavy burden, a crushing weight. Amelia ran. She ran from the park, from the pain, from the truth that had just dismantled her entire existence. The legal battle was swift and decisive. Evelyn Thorne was arrested and charged with kidnapping. She was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, her web of lies finally collapsing around her. The story ends here, but in many ways, it's just the beginning. The journey for Elara, Leo, and their daughter Amelia is far from over. There's a lifetime of pain and missed opportunities to heal from. But for the first time in 23 years, Elara and Leo feel a sense of hope. They have their child back. And though their child may be different from the one they lost, a vibrant, strong young woman named Amelia, she is a part of them. The baby blanket was identical to the one she lost years ago, and with that single thread, the story of a lost boy and a stolen identity was finally revealed. And as we close this chapter, we leave you with this chilling thought. What if the things we lose aren't really lost at all? What if they're just waiting for the right moment to return? If you found this story as captivating and unsettling as we did, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue to bring you these incredible, true stories. We'll be back soon with another tale of a forgotten tie. Until then, be careful what you leave behind.